Hi everyone, welcome to another session of Core Units Launch Pods. My name is Juan and I'm joined here by some people interested in a way or another about this exciting transformation, about making Maker more decentralized, or even more decentralized, I should say. So today we have the pleasure of having Rojo or Monkey Irish with us, and he'll be giving an overview of the collateral onboarding core unit. So yeah, I'm personally very excited to see how we can grow MakerDAO in general, and in this case in particular, onboard more collateral. So looking forward to this. Rojo, if you can let everyone know who you are and give a brief presentation.
It sounds great. Thanks, Juan. And hi everyone. Let me do this. Let me share my screen. I've got a couple of slides that I'd like to share with everybody. One moment, please. Hangouts and Zoom are a little bit different in the way things work, but I'll get it taken care of here in a moment. All right, everyone should be able to see my slides. Is that correct?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, so let's do this. Again, thanks for taking the time today to allow me to participate in the Launchpod session. This will probably be a little bit different than other sessions. Like you, I have a lot of questions about collateral onboarding, the offboarding process, or processes in general, governance, our go-to-market strategies. And given my experience in the foundation, I'm quite certain that this core unit is critical, um, but it'll materialize when the time is right and the appropriate people are present. And I'll talk more about that in the presentation. I'll be pausing for some questions and feedback throughout the presentation. So if we run out of time, I'll work with Juan on any follow-up to be posted to Rocket Chat or the forum. And as for the agenda, I want to take a small amount of time to introduce myself to the community and share with you my background with the Maker Foundation and prior experience that I believe is relevant to this core unit. Next, I'll share the motivation and why I'm proposing this core unit. And last, I'll discuss what I think is needed to move this core unit forward in the governance process. So with that, let's begin. All right, so who am I? I am Groot. Now, no, not really. I just love that movie. And if any of you know the movie reference, go ahead and put it in the chat. And I think I have more hair than Vin Diesel as well. So my name's Robert, or Rojo, or Oho, and I go by Monkey Irish in all the popular places. I think I was patient zero in Colorado when I got COVID after ETH Denver. Um, and when I'm not working, I love to enjoy the outdoors, whether in the mountains or the beach. I've been part of the Maker Foundation for almost 2 years now and investigating where I can be of service after the foundation's dissolution. So for the past 6 months, I've been leading the project behind the dissolution. So I know everything. What drew me to Maker is first off the people, and secondly, the opportunity that we have in DeFi. It's been an amazing team to work with, and I hope to continue building existing relationships and forming new ones within the community. I also have some pretty inspiring photos of Foundation folks, so I know how to get things done. Any idea of who that is, what he's doing, and what happened the night before? And I don't think he's on the call, by the way. It's either, let's see, what happened? It's either a bar, a football game, a woman, or jet lag.
Or all of the above.
Or all of the above. And that's our fearless leader, Nick. And that was in Warsaw. We had an offsite meeting, and that was during one of the mornings where I think he actually fell asleep. So I have more photos, by the way. I have an extensive career, and I've been at this for some time. I love to focus on things that haven't been done before. I mean, how do you dissolve a foundation and turn it over into a DAO, right? These things are really motivational for me. I gain a lot of personal enjoyment, and I also excel at doing them. There are a lot of people in or leaving the foundation that have been working behind the scenes to enable the DAO and give us a springboard for much greater success. And while people like myself haven't been directly involved with the community, our efforts enable us to have the conversations and discussions that are going on today. And there's a reservoir of knowledge that's critical to be transferred into the community. It's challenging to help others understand how many experiments in the foundation we ran, what didn't go well, what we learned, and the improvements we made. And I really believe it's critical to transfer that knowledge into the community. And this presentation is one of those efforts. So I'm going to pause here for just a moment to see if there are any questions. I'm also going to figure out where the chat is so I can.
If there's any questions
Yeah.
to be read, I can go ahead, Rojo. But I think no
Yes.
questions so far.
All right, great, thanks. Yes, Guardian of the Galaxies, absolutely. So let me move on to the motivation. Given the growth of DAI since the multi-collateral DAI launch in November of 2019, which yours truly was the launch manager for that, it's quite clear supply is the cornerstone of the protocol and ecosystem. And given our success, it's also equally as clear that others would love to displace Maker's position in DeFi. You know, last year it felt like this was happening when other lending protocols and yield farming projects became super popular, like overnight. Things move really fast in this industry, and it's really funny how Maker moved from hero to zero to hero again. I just love to see where we're at now, given everything that's happened over the past few years. I think it's also important to recognize that where there's money to be made, all sorts of people will show up, including traditional finance. We have to remember the growth of the DAI supply comes at a cost. As we onboard crypto native assets, there's a lot of care and maintenance and feeding required to ensure we're making the best choices for the DAO. And given the cost to operate the protocol, the topic of offboarding collateral is now present in most people's minds. Maintaining what we currently have is important, as well as continuing to expand into new crypto native assets. As we add collateral, we need to ensure that the collateral makes good business sense for the protocol. The great news is that we're experimenting, we're learning and adapting, and a lot of progress has been made. Then we have the trillions of dollars of assets that are locked up in the real world. It is critical we attract and onboard these assets to diversify the protocol and help stabilize the ecosystem. While we weathered the storm last week, I think we're all hoping for much greater predictability in the future. I'm going to pause there for just a moment. A lot of this information is very commonplace, but I'm presenting it for completeness because I think it's important as it relates to collateral onboarding. Okay, let me move on. So I'd like to start with the basics, since not everybody's familiar with the collateral onboarding unit and the proposal that's been made. This core unit would provide product management, engineering, and technical services for onboarding and offboarding collateral. The implementation leads to consolidating the collateral technical functions into one core unit. Some of you might have worked on teams where cross-functional value was delivered with each software development iteration. What I'm referring to specifically is this concept of a product team. And a product team is a more holistic approach in delivering incremental features and delivering value each time you quote unquote ship software. And you can think of these features as specific collateral or classes of collateral, and they collectively roll up into what I'm referring to the product. All products have a life cycle and need to be continuously assessed and managed, and our collateral is no different. The health of a product also needs to be tracked using metrics and dashboards to read out the current status. And typically these are functions of product management or a product management team. I'd also like to make sure that I'm very clear on one point. This core unit would be a very highly collaborative effort, and it's a partnership, not competition, with the key stakeholders in the DAO. For me, if the goal is decentralization, and it's still a goal at this present moment, then diversity and parallelization is a key part of that strategy. And the one-to-one translation of teams from the foundation into the DAO is this first logical step. currently you're seeing a lot of this happen. So the question is, what's the next step? It's this product-oriented, holistic approach I've mentioned, and it also allows each of our core units to be highly focused and deliver on their core unit mandates. To me, it's simple. I rely on you to do your job. You rely on me of the same. We align, we communicate, and we collaborate in the spaces in between. So, in my opinion, we're still on this road to decentralization. And right now, it's about building business continuity and continuing to transfer into the DAO the key aspects of running the protocol. A critical part of this continuity is collateral onboarding and offboarding. And as we all know, it starts with the supply, and that's the focus of this core unit. Our collateral onboarding processes are almost a mirror image of what I managed and facilitated within the foundation. I'll also add, with the addition of community and government's involvement, when Cyrus departed the foundation. I know and I've directly experienced the bottlenecks for quite some time, and it's clear to me that our current structure does not scale in the way that we needed to. Again, this is again the need for the collateral onboarding core unit. So I'm gonna pause there before I get to the last slide to see if there are any questions.
I have a couple of questions, Rojo, but I'm not sure if you're covering them later. So my question is, how are you planning on achieving this? Because on the one hand, you seem to want to provide all this infrastructure, or maybe it's not infrastructure of people, right? But it's a layer of or a team that wants to help. And on the other hand, it's collaborate with these teams or core units that are already onboarding collateral types, and they are, well, quite frankly, they are a little bit overwhelmed by the amount of work that they have, right? So it's a bit on how would you approach this this collaboration while at the same time not adding more to the problem instead of the solution.
Yeah, and let me do this. Let me clear the last slide because there's
Sure.
a realization that I've personally come to, and I think it will help set the stage.
Mm-hmm.
I can go on and give you my opinion to answer that question because I've been thinking about this for this isn't the first time that this question has come up. I've actually been working behind the scenes for multiple months looking at this opportunity and what I think it would take to scale it to the next level. So I'm gonna just go to the next slide and then open up for questions. So here's what I'm asking of the community. I've spent more time contributing to the protocol than most. I have a vested interest in Maker, and I want to see it succeed. I think we've created the most important ecosystem in DeFi, and also have the ability to make a significant contribution to transforming traditional finance. I initially wrote the MIPS and proposed myself as the core unit facilitator. And unfortunately, at this moment, I believe my background and experience can be of greater value if it's used elsewhere. So, what I'm asking for is a few people from the community or even from the foundation to step forward into the roles of facilitator and team lead for the collateral onboarding core unit. In the MIP core unit form thread, Long had presented an approach for starting up this core unit. My recommendation would be to read through that for consideration. It really requires somebody with some basic project management skills to assess the current collateral onboarding processes, work with the community to modify the initial MIPS that I published and bring those up to date, and then make a formal submission for this core unit. My analysis also came and suggested that there's really a bifurcation of responsibilities between facilitator and team lead, and I'm seeing this, like, for example, SES is a great example of it. I believe they're fundamentally different roles and very different skill sets, and so facilitators, generally speaking, are more politicians, and they enjoy working with a variety of people in a very unstructured environment. That's not their only role, but generally speaking, someone really needs to have skill sets that are based upon enjoying that type of interaction. And many people thrive in this environment. Peyton, I know you were involved in the legislative branch here in Colorado, so you understand that. And I think that's a really healthy set of experiences for people to bring into this. Team leads, on the other hand, just they're focused on getting the work done. We're hiring them because they have proven experience. They know how to follow best practices of product and engineering management. Unfortunately, a lot of these people resemble unicorns since the skill set is a combination of a lot of skills. And I know that really well because I'm kind of one of those people. Ultimately, though, they're very hard to recruit, hire, and retain. So, in this market today, just like with, different types of engineering skills, we know how challenging that can be. And we also know that the market rates to pay for some of the people that we want to bring on board. So overall, my intention is this. I'd like to help this core unit be successful. My offer to the community is to help, coach or advise anyone that might be interested in moving this core unit forward, to be able to transfer any information that I have from the foundation, to be able to share knowledge I have about potential next steps in moving this forward, or anything else that might be of value given my background experience. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions you might have. I'm happy to start, Juan, with your question if you feel that's appropriate.
So first, I would like to start with the. It seems that you're looking to coach this core unit instead of forming part of it. Is that right?
That's correct. I think that's my best value at this point, because for the work that I've done in the past, I have a lot of experience, and I've been in the DeFi space since 2017, and I really want to stay involved in this project. I'm challenged personally because I don't see where I could fully utilize my skill set, and quite frankly, I don't think the community is willing to pay for what my market rate is either. So that's the other factor that I've been want to be very sensitive to. If that is up for consideration, I might consider playing a different role. But I'm not seeing the match right now, given the feedback that I've gotten, the people that I've talked with, and just my general assessment of this overall, where we're at with our MIPS process, with governance and onboarding core units.
Okay, interesting. Does anyone have any questions, or should I keep?
Yeah, I have a question. So we just seen the Marcom's core unit team kind of full flat, and I think one of the mistakes, and they'll admit it, is that the community wasn't aware who they were, where they come from, what exactly they've done in the past. How do you, as somebody that I've seen you around obviously for the last 2 years here and there, but how are you going to overcome that hurdle? And I guess, why not take the route of incubating into this core unit? Because if the Marcom team would have maybe taken, and I think what you're doing right now is great. I think what you're doing, having this meetup is cool, because at first, when I first saw Monkey.Irish, I wasn't sure who it was. So this is cool. Now I know it's you. So this is good. So I guess that, yeah, those were my questions. Like, how do you overcome the community maybe not being aware with what you've done in the past for Maker and the DAO, and also why not take the incubator route?
Yeah, it's a great question, Frank, and that was part of the reason why that I wanted to come forward in the community and introduce myself, right? So now you have an understanding of who I am and what I've done, and there's a lot more detail I could share with you about my background and experience, and why I can contribute greatly to this particular core unit. And it's really challenging. So there's multiple things going on. I want to contribute to Maker, right? And I want to see the protocol grow, and I want to see us be very successful. But I also have my own personal needs as well, right? So it's balancing those two. If I was onboarding a team of people, and see, that's the first conclusion that I came to, which is that, what I'll do is I'll wait until I find a team, and then I'll onboard the team. And then what I'll do is, initially my thought was I would play role of facilitator and team lead, because I have the capabilities to do both. But the reality is that they're two different roles. That's my opinion. Others might see that differently because of some of the way the core units are coming forward. But that's the way that I would suggest, and that's the aha that I came to kind of later in the process, and even after I published the MIPS. So one of the specific questions you asked about getting to know me, and this is the challenge that I feel that we could be having as people leave the foundation. They're more like me that you don't know and that have played significant roles inside of the foundation. And my advice to the community would be is grab these people, get them, if there are core units coming forward, get the core units on board, let people work. Obviously, there are some boundaries and parameters that we need to put in place, right? Yes, it's very acceptable and very reasonable to challenge budgets and ask questions. And I firmly believe we should be doing that. But we really need the business continuity. We need to replicate, in a lot of respects, what we're currently doing today, get that in the community, get things operating, and then allow governance and others to kind of smooth out the process and evaluate and decide, oh, we need more of this and less of this over here. Because I'm telling you, one of the things that's coming out, and I don't know how it's going to come out, is the whole tech ops and DevOps operation inside of the foundation. And I'm totally speaking from a community member's perspective right now. And so experiencing the events that we had in the past week and a half and seeing what that team was doing, and then also seeing there were other teams working very hard, don't get me wrong, but to see what they did and then try to understand how that would work in a decentralized environment, I still can't really wrap my head around it yet. So I'm pushing the point of it's really important that we embrace, for business continuity perspective, to get people into the community and allow that to move forward and then make adjustments. Because I know for right now, for example, there's no budget cap that we're working toward. We just have a pool of money, and we'll work on that and we'll get that taken care of, because every organization has a budget cap. You got to work to a budget. And there'll be things that we feel we need to do more of and things we need to do less of. And there will be things we need to eliminate. So I know I covered a lot of ground, Frank, but hopefully that answered your question. If not, I'm more than happy to dig into any piece there.
Yeah, that's actually a good point that you brought up right there at the end. And I want to circle back because I heard you say something about that you were one of the first people to, maybe I misheard you, to get involved with MIPS. Were you one of the first authors, or can you just clarify that for me?
Oh yeah, so my involvement when we were, this dates back to actually when I first came on board, and there was a DevCon shortly after I came on board, and Charles at the time was working very closely with Arun to try to figure out what that looked like. And so from a very early perspective, in fact, months way before that the MIPS actually came out, there was a lot of work that was done there. And so from a coordination perspective, there was a lot of work that we were doing. I didn't directly write the MIPS. Part of my responsibility, for example, when I first came on board, running the launch process for the multi-collateral die was a key part of that. I was an agile coach for all the engineering teams in the foundation. So my hands were in everything, and we put together a product and engineering framework, which there were some great things that happened with it, and there's some things we learned from. And so that really helped set the roadmaps and the sprint cycles and what the teams were focused on, and the self-sustaining maker roadmap, which people might have heard of. I was all embodied in all of that. And so with Wouter, myself, and other people in the engineering team, of course, our product team as well, and moving that forward. Then there were a lot of special projects that I took on. One was the multi-collateral die launch, the collateral onboarding process. Initially, internally, we needed to put something together to be able to figure out, like, we've got to move collateral through the system. And now that we had multi-collateral die, we could do it, right? So we needed a process. And then, of course, after that, some months after that, we started involving the community more. So there was a cross-functional effort putting together the collateral onboarding documentation, which Nikolai from the integrations team and Charles was very much involved, and Nick and Chris and Mark Andre. There were a lot of people. Of course, that was back when Mariano and Rich and Cyrus were all here as well, right? So I lived through that era. In addition to that, so I was doing these projects while being the coach, and then late last year, August, September last year, November, it was really clear that we needed someone to help manage the entire process for the dissolution of the foundation. So it was a lot of internal work, and we weren't quite ready yet to come to the community. And we had to be very careful the hands-off relationship with the community as well, because in no way did we want to be seen as influencing the community to do anything. The community does what they want to do, and there's a governance process behind that to get things done. So that's been my project, which is now winding down. I'm probably one of the last people to keep the lights on inside of the foundation before we actually do the dissolution. So hopefully that gives you some context on some of the other things that I've been involved with. But the MIPS, I wrote the MIPS for the Collateral Onboarding Core Unit, and those are the three that I submitted.
Oh, thank you, Ro. I appreciate that.
Yeah, hopefully that's helpful.
Can I maybe ask a brief question? So you can emphasize the importance of kind of continuity and of like the DAO taking on the members in the foundation and things, which I think makes sense. But you also sort of said you sort of decided to, I guess, like step down from doing the collateral onboarding units, I guess. So my question is more sort of like, what was it that made you decide to do that? Because it kind of feels like you've, I guess, stepped down without, it hasn't like gone to a vote, right? Like there's been no like sort of actual votes or sort of, I mean, the community has been sort of, you've talked with a few people I know, right? But I don't think there's been any like formal indication that DAO is unwilling to employ you, right? Like regardless of what your market rate is, which maybe would be useful to know, but like we pay facilitators quite a lot as it is. So I don't know, maybe that's reasonable. Maybe it's not, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
so I guess I'm kind of curious.
Yeah,
why you decided to stop.
Yeah, I had the same comment. I want to encourage anyone, even if you're, I don't know, whoever the best developer in the world and you think you're too expensive, I think that eventually maker holders should decide what's too expensive or not. And this applies to anything. Like if you have the craziest idea and you think that it will take a certain amount of DAI, why not let maker decide for yes or no? So yeah, totally support that comment.
Yeah, I'll just echo what Juan and Long said. I think there'd be two things, right? Like number one, if you are intending to not step up and be in that dual role, which is understandable because it's a lot that's overwhelming, like letting everyone kind of know, because I was unaware of that, or maybe that just is sort of something you've come to recently. And then the second is, I think in the essence of transparency, it's a good idea to bring up what you think your market rate is, because it just helps the DAO in the long term, even if it basically puts you in a spotlight you may be uncomfortable with. But inevitably it helps us all improve, right? Because when we went through this with smart contracts as a DAO, it was, there was definitely a contentious conversation, but there was never any ill will towards anybody. I think it's really just a debate. It's just very hard to do that on a written forum and not sort of take it in different directions. So I think that's kind of one of those facilitator responsibilities, but I just am going to echo again, Long and Want, just go for it, man. Put it out there. There's no problems with having a debate, because I think, your experience shines. It's quite obvious how skilled you are. So I think it'd be a great conversation to have.
Thanks, Tim. And thanks everyone for the comment. This wasn't my approach, sometimes a little bit different than other people's approach. And in the role that I've played, because I facilitated so many projects and people over the course of my career. And so I pick up on the nuances and things that are going on. And I realized the challenges that the community faced as the protocol engineering team came on board. And I realized there's a lot that we still face in that area in the way of incentives and compensation. So for me, I'm playing both roles. And this is what's a little challenging, where I'm stepping into a community role and going, what do I think is the best for the protocol right now? And Long, the proposal that you made in the forum, to me, seems like a very reasonable approach, but it doesn't require someone like me to do it. I would do it, but it doesn't require me. So when you take a look at we also want to make sure we're being smart with our monies and right person, right job. And the person doing the facilitator role, and I got really clear, and Tim, that was true. This was a learning process for me, which started several months ago, talking with a lot of people inside of the foundation. And then as I put the MIP set out there to talk with the community and getting more feedback from that. So the one thing that I learned very recently is that no, this is really two separate roles. And yes, could I step in and do both roles initially? Absolutely, right, to get things going. But I think that what's needed at the moment is truly more of a project manager to assess our current processes. And I'll tell you, generally speaking, what we have is that it's broken up into multiple core units, and each of those core units have different priorities. And we all know how important collateral on and offboarding is, but we're also competing against the priorities of that core unit. So the way to break that logjam is to gradually pull those responsibilities. And when I say pull them out, I just simply mean consolidation, put it into a core unit with some very competent, trusted people that have guardrails to be able to streamline the collateral onboarding process. It doesn't mean that Nick's team isn't involved, or Chris's team, or Derek's team's not involved, or Primos's team is not involved. It doesn't mean that at all. What it means is that we can agree upon a set of guidelines and guardrails to streamline collateral and move it through the system, right? Because the goal of the team is it's a technical team, and we want to quickly get collateral onboarded and do a lot of experimentation, by the way. So there's some autonomous aspects of the team as well. Now, once the collateral is onboarded, and let's say it's gone through all the audit levels that we need to, and there's no more technical services to be done, it's really about risk scaling that particular piece of collateral and potentially deciding, hey, this is not profitable for us, because as a project management role, we're assessing our collateral. It's a product. We need to make sure we know what's profitable, what's not profitable. Do we continue this? Do we end of life this? And then if there's technical work to be done, that can flow back into the core unit to be able to do the offboarding work as it relates to collateral. So I got a little bit of a tangent there, but the reason why I did that is because that role in doing that work is really different than the facilitator. And so, when I take a look at my market rate, I'm of the market rate of a senior smart contract engineer. That's where I'm at. So those figures that you're paying them, now, if you want to pay me that day one out of the gate, right? For me personally, I'm like, hey man, I'm interested. But if I put my community hat on, I'm like, I don't think that's the best thing for the community.
So maybe I kind of appreciate that point of view, but I would kind of counter with, we don't exactly have like a huge line of people who are like queuing up to do this, right? So I would maybe argue that, yeah, sure, maybe like the ideal would be having someone who would like accept a lower market rate to do the same thing. Having someone doing it at all is probably better than having no one doing it. So there's a chance that the protocol is willing to pay more, given that someone else, or given that like there is no one else available, right? So
yeah, and if anything, if you get approved with that rate, or even double that rate, and you're like, it's outrageous, I'm being paid double as the best smart contract developer that Maker has, and there's no one else, potentially that would attract people that would say, hey, I can do what Robert's doing much better, and I'll do it for half the price, and eventually it would all balance itself. At least that's a bit the vision of making everything decentralized.
And I really appreciate this feedback, because this is the conversation that I want to have with the community. And I wanted to share, this was really the forum that I wanted to use to share my concerns. And I'm really, I'm very, very appreciative of people coming forward and sharing, and giving me feedback, because like you said, Juan and others, it's just really challenging to do in the forums in a written way, because there's so much here, right? And I could put together the most detailed plans in the world, and the reality is that they're just going to generate more questions, right? So these forums, don't get me wrong, I have a very strong discipline as it relates to product and engineering management. And I've got all the gazillion certifications, and I've done this for a very long time. So, when it comes to productizing something and moving it through the system and getting things spit out the other end, I know it left and up and down, left and right. So, it's just, for me to have these conversations again is really helpful, and I'm also open for suggestions on next steps that the community might feel would be acceptable to move forward.
Sounds good. Any other questions or comments from the present people? Aaron, Planet X, you've been quiet today.
Yeah, hi. I was a little bit late for this meeting, so I was actually planning on staying quiet. It was kind of disappointing to hear that you are not looking to lead up this core unit yourself. I don't know where that leaves us, because this is as proposed, as I understand it. This is a core unit that will take a little bit of 3 other core units and streamline the onboarding process. No, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's a very valuable proposition, but it's going to take some skills to pull that off. So I would say that it would be a real advantage to have someone that both knows the work and the organization, and not anyone from the outside, because it's going to be so much more difficult to maneuver inside the organization, because basically you will need the green lightning from both oracles, risk, and engineering, and they would say, yeah, okay, this is valuable, we will work with this. And it's a bit of a tough job.
Yeah, it's again, I've had the opportunity to experience it directly, and I can't tell you how many sprint planning calls I was on, and I looked at the smart contracts team eyes, and the same thing would happen over and over again for every 2-week cadence that we were on, and there was a lot of time that was committed to onboarding collateral, and quite frankly, some people got sick and tired of it. I don't know for sure, but I think that's part of the reason why some people did leave during the past couple of years of smart contract team, because it wasn't quote unquote sexy, or it wasn't the innovative work. And I understand that. That's yet another challenge that I could talk a lot about as well, because I think there's a concept of having permanent team members on the collateral onboarding team that are, because over time, what I'd love to see happen is that the collateral onboarding core unit could do innovative work as well. But that would take time to make sure we have the best people in those roles, because our new collateral types, especially real world finance, and when I talked to Seb, as far as they're still trying to figure out the model. And because you have to find general groupings of collateral to be able to say, okay, I see a pattern here, and we could systematize this and then get it into the funnel, right? So we spit it back out, and then we can manage it with risk. And timing wise, between now and let's say the end of the year, all of that time is really needed to get this core unit up and running. And I think it dovetails very nicely into some of the work that real world finance is doing, because as they start to onboard or want to onboard more collateral, they're either going to be like, I want to hire smart contract engineers, or I need some help, or where do I go? And part of my conversation with Seb was, well, that would be one of the services that I would see this team provide, where we do have smart contract engineers. They're very competent, and we could, because it's collateral focused, we would take and help that core unit with their technical needs. So there's also, the other aspect was, because of Wouter and SES and Juan with the core unit there, having, as a funnel to attract and bring people in, because a lot of times the primitives of the DAI ecosystem, to cut your teeth on collateral is a beautiful place to learn, right? And we all know that, when new people comes on board a team, right? like the protocol engineering. Somebody's got to burn time to get that person up to speed, right? And where they could be doing other things. So could you incubate them on collateral onboarding with some very safe collateral things we've done before, right? And get them to know the system. And then from there, they might migrate to different teams. But the concept is to have this feeder system to pull new devs in. They might not be new devs, right? But they might be new to DeFi and Maker, and put them through to allow them to focus on collateral onboarding, and then maybe spin them off to a different core unit. So there's a lot in the way of building the team and then working with the team, building infrastructure. Like, for example, Juan, as it relates to the parallelization effort for smart contracts, we have to figure that out, right? All the opportunities, all the engineering experiences I've had in the past, we've had multiple teams working on the same code base. And I know blockchain is different. I know smart contracts are different, but these are just technical problems that we can resolve. It's about putting the processes around that and the guardrails to make sure that it's like, oh, great. So here's how the system works. And I think the chart that Wouter presented in showing how you go from very low risk to high risk and all the steps that are needed to make sure the audits are in place, we're familiar with what's going on, the debt ceilings, the parameters, all of that, right? We're taking care of all that as we move it through the system. It's just not collateral, by the way. It's a lot of other functionality that we're going to need inside of the protocol as well. So I went on kind of a diatribe there. It was a lot of words, but I just wanted to share more about, it's like that's was part of my vision to move this this core unit forward. Like I said, documenting it and putting all this stuff in writing, I think there's an element of it that's important. But for me, it's like you go to the product backlog. The product backlogs are an art. They're part science, but it's mostly art. And that's the heart of the system, right? And that's telling you what's coming through the system, who's working on what's slated where, what are we onboarding, what are we offboarding, where are we investing time potentially in technical debt, or we need to build something to support a certain collateral type, and we need to obviously work with the other core teams to be able to do that. So that's where I always go when it comes to my planning and what to do next. So hopefully some of that is helpful for this team and the broader community.
Right. What happens to this MIP if no one is willing or able to step forward and lead this?
It's a good question, and I'm not sure because I don't think there's been a situation yet where something's been proposed. And for me,
yeah, I can answer it if you want. Like, in terms of the MIP itself, it'll just get marked as like, it's like dropped, or like, with like no author. And then if someone else wants to pick it up, they can. If someone else wants to write something else, they can. If nothing ever happens with it, that's fine too. For some definitions of fine, right? Like, so yeah, like in terms of process, it just gets like without an owner, and just nothing happens going forward. So.
Yeah.
So my question really back to the community is that I see both sides of it, and if I solely think about my needs and helping the foundation, is that putting forward a proposal or an updated version of the MIPS with a market rate given my background and experience, that's something that the community would seriously consider. Is that what I'm hearing?
I mean, who is the community ultimately, right? Like this is the thing. It's very hard to know for sure what governments will accept or not accept without actually proposing it and putting it to a vote, right? You can put like an informal poll forwards if you want to kind of ask community members, but community members don't map one-to-one with MKR holders, so that may, be helpful, may be relevant, may not be helpful or relevant. So we sort of run into this problem a lot. It's very difficult for the community to answer questions like that, right? Because, I mean, everyone in this meeting can say, yeah, that sounds like a great idea, and then it can still fail to pass. Or the exact opposite, everyone in this meeting can say this is a horrible idea, and stakeholders can think otherwise and it will pass. So there's an element of just like proposing something and seeing what happens. Yeah, like I think trying to engage with the community beforehand is a good idea. Otherwise you end up in a situation like Marcoms did. So like obviously this is a great start, and you've been obviously talking to people, which is great. But there's no like definitive answer that we can give you, I guess, prior to like a proposal, right?
Thank you. That's valid. I mean, what I'm hearing there is that, I mean, and I know it's not a binding activity as far as the poll, but it sounds like putting something like that out there. If I like just to understand a little bit more about, you know, the interest, if you will. And granted, I know that, you know, obviously the MKR voters are the ones that actually you know, vote things in. So yeah, okay, that's helpful. Anything else? Go ahead, Peyton.
Right. I know from my perspective, it seems like there's definitely like a recruiting challenge within all of this, and that would be like my biggest concern is like, okay, well, if you look at the community, who's qualified to do this? Well, the people already on teams doing things that I want them to do. So like personally, I would, you know, see having more recruitment. Like it sounds like, I don't know, because your background with coaching and everything probably makes you pretty good for that. Like that would be my intuition, but maybe that's not a field you feel comfortable with in terms of saying, hey, I can recruit a team and I can do this. And if that's the case, then, you know, bringing a recruiter on board would make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, and you know, working with SCS and I'm sorry, is it Theo? I'm not sure I get your name.
Yep. I'm here, Robert, but I'm on a terrace now, and there's a bit of music in the background, so that's why I'm without video and on mute. So I noted that we would need to look for a facilitator and team lead for a collateral onboarding, and I was planning to get in touch after the call now and perhaps schedule an intro.
That's great. And again, I'm more than happy to help in that effort. And I know that we were it was on my list to connect with you as well. So yeah, the recruiting challenge. So before I got into the blockchain and crypto world, I ran about a 50-person engineering team that was highly distributed, had outsourced contractors, outsourced teams. It was quite interesting. And unfortunately, I didn't have consistent people or HR support to be able to help me with that. So I am so, and then over the years, I've hired so many engineers and people and product folks and all of that. So I'm super familiar and I understand the challenges. And that's one of the things that I did point out in the MIPS, because it's like, you know, it's a brand new team, and I would have loved to be able to attract people, to have a few more people to onboard at the same time. But with lacking that, you know, you know, I think that the structures and the incentives are there to attract high quality talent. It's just that the quantity of people, plus there is some competition between the core units, because we're all trying to hire the same people in some ways. So that's the other challenge. So the actual process of getting the core unit up and running is really dependent upon finding the people. That's really.
I think even with onboarding, there could be, with the rise of VR, there could be solutions that would facilitate ramping up people on MakerDAO and what each and every core unit does, what would be the scope behind that, and even what could be some best practices. So there are solutions around this, even web-based or like in VR that could be built to help with onboarding. And I'm super excited just to help in recruiting and pick things up as we go, and potentially also arrive to a model for decentralized recruiting that would allow each core unit to have access to the same talent pool, but also guide candidates into figuring out what project, what core unit is ideal for them and excites them the most. That would take a bit of time, and I think from our side, the recruiting team, and there's still a few things we need to figure out, processes we need to set, and workflows, and just figure out what would be the best dynamic with the existing team and myself to sort of help facilitate attracting new contributors.
Thank you for that.
Pleasure. Hope the music didn't cover my, my voice.
You're all good. Yeah, I mean, this is a great example of core units working together, because just leveraging the efforts that you're putting together in the recruiting, and also the funnel of, you have to attract, you have to hire, and you have to retain, right? Retaining individuals is one of the most challenging things you're going to do, because we work in such a competitive market right now. There are ways around that, right? We're finding them.
Great. Do you have any other questions or comments? Maybe Roger, you can comment on, well, or next steps or the lack thereof.
Let me do this. We've got a holiday weekend coming up, and I'm going to be just taking a little time off here. And let me reflect on this conversation. Like I said, I want this to succeed. I love this project. I've invested 2 years of my life. When I found blockchain in 2017, it was like I was so sick and tired of the traditional IT, software development, engineering world. And when I bumped into this community, I'm like, oh boy, I've found my home, right? And I want to spend the next several decades doing this work, and I want to see Maker be successful. I love the people and the project, and I really believe we have an amazing opportunity. So that's the basis that I'm working from. And I also want to be sensitive to the community's needs as well as my needs as well. So it's sort of a balancing act. But let me reflect on this and over this upcoming weekend, and I'll share my next steps.
I do have one suggestion as well. The content team is premiering these Ask Me Anything sessions, and considering that this topic is so rich, and you've articulated clearly that you actually want to create a team that not only has synergies with other teams that are already out there, risk, smart contracts, but you want to share the load. I think that might be a really ideal format for you to sort of share some of those thoughts, which might then also help your follow-up on the forums to make it like more clear and written feedback. So just an idea to take into consideration.
That is an awesome idea. Thanks, Tim. I would love to do an AMA. So that's an easy next step.
You're on mute, Tim, whatever you said.
I think my expression covered it, but it was basically, yeah, why not?
It did cover it. Any other questions or comments?
In terms of planning that AMA, feel free to reach out to me on Rocket Chat, jerry.g. Be happy to plan that.
Thanks, Jerry. I will do that right after the call.
Wonderful.
So Roger, where can people find you if they want to reach out or have any questions?
I'm Rocket Chat, Discord. Rocket Chat primarily is just because it's so central. It's used by so many. I'm trying to remove that word from my vocabulary. I've been working on it for 2 years now. Rocket Chat's great, or Discord, right? And you can find, I'm Monkey Irish at just about everywhere.
Sounds good. So thank you everyone for coming, and let's keep the discussion going in the forum.
Thanks everyone for your time.
Thanks, Robert. Nice seeing everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.